let's just talk about, the desire, or maybe the focus being too much on safety, as you say. I mean, just last year we did have that AI Safety Summit as well here in the UK. Is that not the aim as well, to ensure that it is as safely put out as possible, not to hurt the economy?
Oh, for sure. And this is about getting the balance right. I mean, AI, generative AI and large language models, the impact of them will be profound on society. And managing the impact of this is a challenge for any government, and it's going to be a big one for years to come. Because they are as change-making as the arrival of the internet. Some people even describe them as significant as the arrival of the printing press. They're that big. So there are safety issues, but what this technology represents is massive opportunities. And we mustn't allow the sort of purpose of them, in terms of the strategic purpose, being all about safety. We've got to be about maximising the opportunities. And one of the big risks of this technology is concentration of power and regulatory capture. And existential threat, which has got a lot of focus over the last year or 18 months, is a bit of a distraction. And we must guard against the dangers being a way of introducing regulations that prevent startups and create barriers to entry for new entrants into this very, very potentially groundbreaking
market. How
market.
do you then find a middle ground then? I mean, if on one side it's absolutely necessary to have that regulation, on the one side you obviously also don't want to block out those opportunities. How do you marry the two to ensure that whatever you put out is helpful?
Sure. Well, I mean, in our report from the House of Lords, I mean, we're in agreement with the government on quite a few things. I mean, we think the UK government, is right not to rush into legislation or creating new specific regulations for this technology. It's a general purpose technology. As I say, many people draw an analogy with the internet, and the internet itself is not regulated as a thing. As things stand at the moment, there is we think it would be too soon to do what Europe is doing. We think they've gone too quickly in terms of their legislation and regulation. However, what we do expect is the government to concentrate on the near-term risks. And we know that in this technology, what this really means right now is the proliferation and the increase of some risks that already exist. So whether that's child sexual abuse images being sort of, much easier to create, whether it's about disinformation or whether it's about fake stuff, that sort of thing. So clearly what the government needs to make sure is that they're increasing whatever measures they can to mitigate that. And they also need to introduce measures to make sure that the high-impact, high-risk type models are tested properly. The big tech firms are currently voluntarily doing this. There may come a point when that has to become mandatory. But even the way in which they do that, what we're saying is the policy objective must always be open markets. So they must not introduce a regime which creates a new barrier for other people.
So many questions. So I think we've got a long chunk of this. I'll try and get into one or two of them. You're talking about the concentration of power as near the start of your first answer. And I thought that was fascinating. And I'm going to say something quite damning, and you're going to disagree with me, I'm sure. We've already lost in Europe. When I look at the biggest AI companies in the world, and I just put in a cursory search just to see, it's all the familiar biggest names on the planet, and none of them, from what I can see, are British, and none of them are European. That concentration of power, Baroness Stowell, has already happened.
Well, there's certainly a lot of it already, for sure, but what they're trying to do is lock it in, and that's what we've got to make sure doesn't happen. So in the UK, we're great at research in the UK, but not always as good as we need to be about commercialisation. We're at the start of large language models and this technology, and what we don't want to see happen is the challenges and the sort of, the new firms that will be, because a lot of that innovation that the big companies have been able to capitalise on actually came out of very small businesses, start-up businesses that have been swallowed up by the bigger firms. And we see that happening, you know, you're quite right, all the time. And we want to create a market where that is not inevitable. And in the UK, one of the things that we recommend in our report is that the government needs to do even more to make sure that the computing facilities, the computing capacity of the UK, it increases all the time. The government's already invested quite a lot in this, but it's got to do more to incentivise firms to invest here. But that computing capacity has got to be accessible to our researchers, and then we've got to support them better than we do now to convert their ideas into real business opportunities.
And that